Hey guys, Anthony here with Lancer Tactical, and today we're going to talk about the Sig MCX Virtus, or as some of you might know, the M13. Today we're going to look at the MCX, and this one's going to be the special limited edition version that you can only get through us. It's going to come in a dark gray. So starting off with the base gun itself, you're going to have a full metal upper and lower receiver with a full metal CNC'd front M-lock rail handguard. Now, as far as the handguard and everything goes, this handguard will be a very easy removable. You just pop off your front body pin here. You can slide this whole thing off, and you'll be able to put your battery in. This is front wired, so you have to keep in mind your battery sizing depending on what kind of battery you want to run with it. Now, as far as the rest of it goes, the internals are going to be what we all know from VFC. This is going to be a inline MOSFET setup running mechanical trigger contacts. It's going to have a stock set of gears, 18-to-1s, and you're going to have a really high torque neodymium magnet motor. Now, the whole combination of that with whatever battery you decide to run makes this an actually very snappy gun right out of the box. I don't mind the way it sits. Some people would want to argue you can put in your upgrades, but as a stock gun, it's actually really good out of the box. You're going to be shooting about 400 FPS out of the box as it comes pre-installed with an M120 spring. Besides that, you do get a secondary spring in the box so that you can go down to CQB lower level FPS with it. That way you can run indoors or you can change it up and go outdoors. Now, as far as swapping your springs are actually pretty easy to swap. You would simply remove your rear stock, and then there's going to be an Allen key so that you can access the rear end, and you should be able to swap your spring no problem. Now, the way you see it here is not the way you get out of the box. We simply took it upon ourselves to sort of dress it up a little bit for you guys. So out of the box, you'll get a 3-position PDW stock that collapses this way. But since it is a Picatinny rear mount, you can put any sort of stock that mounts via a 1913 or a Picatinny rail. So we went ahead and we put on this one for now, just for show. We'll get over the attachments a little bit later. But just going over it, since this is a fully licensed and trademarked Sig product, you will get all the nice little trays and everything. So you'll see it says Virtus, you'll have all the MCX markings, it says Sig on it. So it's going to be a real nice one if you're trying to actually have like an accurate to the real MCX, depending on what it is that you're trying to do with it. Now, as far as it goes when it comes to the rest of it, this nice setup is going to be running pretty much any typical V2 products. It is going to be a full metal V2 gearbox, so any sort of upgrades that your heart desires, you can throw right into it. Now, as far as your controls, you are going to have an ambi selector and an ambi mag release. So you'll have your mag release on this end, and as well on the opposite end here, you'll have your mag release as well. So whether you're a lefty or a righty, this should fit your needs. You have an actual working bolt catch, so it does lock back, and then you can drop it to send it forward. Now, as far as weight goes, this is supposed to be, and in my ability to tell, this is fairly accurate to what the real MCX sort of weighs. Mind you, obviously not a full mag, things like that, so that's going to change your weight. But as with the weight and the way it is, it handles remarkably well. It's pretty comfortable to shoot, pretty comfortable to hold, and then depending on what stock system you're running, it's going to change that as well. So for example, with this one, we have the folding stock, so you can make it short if you wanted to, have it open up, have your full length rifle. Your muzzle device is threaded to 14 mil, so you can put on a tracer unit or any sort of muzzle device that you wish. Obviously, having a full monolithic top rail lets you do your laser, your optic, or any sort of variations of that. You do have M-lock on the underside and on your side, so you can mount any sort of a grip, foregrip, angled grip, whatever your heart's content. Same thing with the side. You can throw on your light, throw on any sort of laser device that you would want to go with. Now, as far as the front handguard, since it is so easy to remove, you can slide this bad boy on or off. The battery is going to go right in here. Just mind your sizing. I would say a 1000 mAh 11.1 should be pretty good because this does have an inline MOSFET, so you can handle a little bit of a stronger battery other than most with no MOSFET. You don't have to worry about your contacts. Now, as far as your battery connector, this is going to be wired to a mini Tamiya plug right out of the box. So keep that in mind whenever you're searching for your batteries that you want to use with this. You're going to need to get something that's a Tamiya plug. And then as far as your rate of fire on this, you're going to be shooting about 18 to 20 rounds a second out of the box. Keep in mind that's also going to be a bit dependent on your battery. Some people would want to run a bigger battery or at least a higher discharge battery. That could increase your rate of fire just a little bit. But for your typical battery, you're going to be shooting about 18 to 20 rounds a second right out of the box. Now this is going to have a rotary style hop-up. So that's going to allow any sort of upgrades or changes if you choose to change that hop-up system. This right out of the box, so it shoots pretty straight, pretty flat, depending on what weight BBs you're using. So you could always just adjust your hop up to compensate for the weight of the BB you're using, and you should get pretty good range. I think from what our testing did, we got about a 200 foot, 175 foot range out of it with the stock configuration. That was shooting at 400 FPS though, mind you. So if you go down to your indoor spring, you might lose a little bit of that range ability. At the same time, depending on the FPS you're shooting, some people might not feel it at a certain distances, but that's just typical when it comes to airsoft. So you want to make sure that you have the right appropriate FPS for whatever scenario you're playing, and likewise BB weights. I would recommend using a little bit of a heavier BB if you're going for outdoors. That way you can get a little bit more range and distance. Also a little bit more accuracy, as that heavier weight will carry itself better through the air and you'll get less wind affecting it. Now another option that you do see a lot of the times that this is actually pretty popular as a base gun for is the HPA upgrade or modification. These have been seen in a variety of different HPA configurations. The most recent that I've seen was someone put a Kythera into it to be a little bit more accurate on the trigger pull and the fact that you have to actually rack your charging handle. So that's another way you can do it, whether you choose to go with something like that, more mechanical, mil-simi, or if you choose to go with something a little bit snappier like a Fusion engine or an F1, F2. You can do all of those things as well. They will, as long as it fits into your gearbox, you'll be fine with all of that. Now moving our way over onto the attachments that you see we have on here, starting from the front to the rear. So we do have the FMA NGAL PEC box here. This is going to be a Viz light and red laser with IR laser as well. And going from there, we're going to have the Ranger Army 500 lumen Scout Light rep. So this one's going to be an M-LOK mount with a swivel mount so that you can position it how you want. You also do get in the box a regular mount so that you don't have to necessarily run it like this. This one's going to be 500 lumens. It is fairly bright. It's not too bad. It's pretty decent for what you're going to be using it for, especially if you're doing some sort of indoor play. That's going to be more than enough. Now from there, we do have the Ranger Armory hand stop. This is going to be a very much reminiscent to the Arasaka hand stops, if those of you that know. So this is going to be an interesting one as well. I kind of personally prefer hand stops over any sort of a vertical grip. I typically end up gripping it something like this. So this works very well. You can position it almost wherever you need since it's so small. It doesn't take up much space of your M-LOK sections. And then moving on to this portion over here, we have the Atlas Customs MRO. Same with the mount. This is going to be the Atlas Customs MRO mount. So this will actually be pretty good for those of you that use like a full face mask, whether it's a dye or some other form of that. This gets it fairly high off the top, so that way you don't actually have to worry about not being able to get a cheek weld and seeing through your optic. So with this setup, you can actually see through the optic and use it properly if you're wearing a full mask like a dye or some other sort of a full face coverage. So moving on to the rear, we have the Atlas Customs SS8R stock. This is going to be a folding full aluminum stock with a rubberized butt pad here. This is folding, but it attaches via a Picatinny or a 1913 mount. So this one will fit on any sort of an AR platform that has a Picatinny rear mount, whether it's something like this where it doesn't even have the buffer tube attachment, or if you have a buffer tube set up and you're able to get the rear Picatinny end plate, this will fit perfectly on there. And it folds nice and easy. Sort of a compact setup here, so if you're trying to run like extra tight CQB, maybe get through doors or something like that, this works. And when it opens up, there's no locking portion, so there's no having to push it up or down to unlock it. You simply swing it out and it locks into place, nice and sturdy. So this is probably one of my preferred stocks for something set up like this. That way you don't have to worry about like having a big buffer tube and a buttstock, especially since this is going to be front wired. You don't have to worry about requiring that extra battery space that you would normally have in your buffer tube and your buttstock setup. Now, when it comes to this one, this is the SS8R variant. There are other variants. For example, there's another version where your buttstock can actually swivel up to make it a little bit more compact. But I prefer this one because you get a nice little bit of a rise here. So that'll be good for your cheek weld. If you're wearing lower mesh and goggles, that'll be perfect. Now, even if you're wearing a dye mask, this doesn't seem to get in the way. It's pretty good to get onto it. You get a nice little cheek weld. You can see down your optic. So you have no issues when it comes to running this one. And just the fact that you can fold it. That's pretty cool, being able to tuck it away like that. This will make it easier even if you're trying to transport, like in your bag or in your case or something. So make it a little bit easier. Obviously, it doesn't take up too much space because of how slim it is, so you don't have to really worry about that. Continuing with some of the attachment points that you get on this. So out of the box, this does come with QD sling mounts, both on the both left side and right side of your rail, as well as the back end here. You get a left and right side QD mount. If you use the original stock that comes with it, that does also have 2 sling mounts on it, as well as it has a loop sling mount on it. Now this, because we're running this particular stock, this one actually does have an additional QD mount. So you have QD mounts here and here. So now if you're running a 2-point or a single point sling, you have that ability with the variety of QD sling options that you have on here, so you can run it in whatever configuration you want to run it in. So if you're looking to get your own MCX Virtus or M13, head on over to any one of our Lancer Tactical retailers and pick one up.